Today we're going to talk about the silent revolution happening across the globe. It's happening in your backyard, and you may not even be aware of it. And if you don't understand what's happening, you could miss out on some massive opportunities. So, I know what you're thinking. The crypto market is down, which means there's no money to be made. But that's just not true. There are so many ways to make money in this market, whether it's bear market or bull market. You just have to know where to look. And today, we're taking a deep dive into one of the most underreported stories in all of crypto. And it's something that I'm really passionate about, because it's giving people hope and opportunity. It's happening in the developing world, but it's happening nonetheless. You see, we live in an increasingly globalized world. But there's still 1.7 billion adults around the world who have no access to a bank account. That's more than 40% of the entire adult population of the planet. We also know that almost half of the world's population lives on less than $2.5 a day, and in places like Venezuela, Zimbabwe, and Argentina, they've experienced hyperinflation that has basically wiped out their life savings. So what do people do? Well, they turn to remittance services to send their hard-earned cash to family and friends in other countries, and unfortunately, they get fleeced by middlemen who take advantage of them with high fees and hidden costs. But there is hope. Bitcoin might be the lifeline that these communities have been waiting for. And again, I am not saying that Bitcoin is a charity, or that you should go out and buy Bitcoin and save the world. I'm simply highlighting the fact that more and more people are turning to Bitcoin as a way out of poverty. According to a recent report by the Bank of International Settlements, global remittances reached $783 billion in 2021, but the average fee for sending money across borders was 6.4%. In some countries, those fees can be as high as 20%, which is obviously insane. And when you're living in extreme poverty, every dollar counts. In El Salvador, where Bitcoin is legal tender, the World Bank estimates that immigrants sent home about $4 billion in remittances in 2021, accounting for about 17% of the country's GDP. However, the average Salvadoran worker in the United States only earns about $1,227 per month, according to the Pew Research Center. After paying taxes and rent, they have about $430 left over to send home. So it's clear that these remittances are vital lifelines for many families. So now let's bring Bitcoin into the equation. When you send Bitcoin internationally, you avoid all of those pesky middlemen, and you can transfer your money directly from one wallet to another. And unlike traditional remittance services, the transaction fees are extremely low, usually less than 1%. So, if you're sending $430 worth of Bitcoin, you'd only pay a few dollars in fees. On top of that, there are no limits on how much Bitcoin you can send, and transactions are typically processed very quickly. And finally, since Bitcoin is a global currency, it's not subject to exchange rates, which means you get a better value for your money. Now, you might be thinking, well, this is great, but how do I actually use it? How do I convert it back to local currency once I receive it? And that's where things get even more interesting. There are a number of startups that are emerging to help people in developing countries convert Bitcoin into local currency. One example is Bitso, a Mexican Bitcoin exchange that allows users to buy everyday items with Bitcoin. Another startup, Bytrafil, allows people to purchase gift cards with Bitcoin. And there are even some businesses that accept Bitcoin as payment for goods and services. This is happening in countries all over the world, from Brazil to Kenya to the Philippines. People are finding ways to use Bitcoin in their daily lives, and it's not just individuals who are embracing Bitcoin either. El Salvador is the first country in the world to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender, and other countries are considering following suit. The president of Argentina recently said that he's open to adopting Bitcoin, and several members of the U.S. Congress have introduced bills to make Washington, D.C., the first major city in the United States to accept Bitcoin for government services. Now, before I move on, I need to make something clear. This is not financial advice. I'm not saying you should rush out and buy Bitcoin to save the day. I am simply highlighting the fact that Bitcoin is becoming an increasingly viable option for people who are looking for a way out of poverty. It's also important to note that not everyone in the developing world is embracing Bitcoin. There are concerns about its volatility, as well as its perceived association with crime and illicit activity. However, As more businesses begin to accept Bitcoin, and as more countries introduce regulations to protect consumers, these concerns are likely to subside. Bitcoin is still pretty new, just around for about 14 years. It's constantly growing and changing. All right, let's bring this to a close and sum things up, shall we? We've talked about the silent revolution that is taking place in the developing world, and we've discussed how Bitcoin is playing a role in this revolution. Now it's time to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this issue? Have you heard of any other organizations that are using Bitcoin to help people in developing countries? And what do you think the future of Bitcoin will be? Leave your comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you want to learn more about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, make sure to follow along. If you're curious about making money with crypto, dive into our other videos on the channel. You won't want to miss them. Thanks for watching. Until next time.